Hey everybody, welcome back to our next episode of CASA. Well, it looks like we're all going to be staying home for a while, and those of us who can go out will be keeping our social distance until we flatten this curve. Welcome to the year 2020, living in a pandemic. Everybody knows that this won't be easy, but that doesn't mean that life and joy, relationships, creativity, and kindness can't flourish. We're finding new ways to connect with each other, new ways to be connected. And that's what CASA is all about. It's a new way of connecting ourselves so that we can still have that relationship with each other, still be loving and serving and sharing life in this strange new world. So welcome to CASA, episode 2. In this week's episode, we have 5 guests, 2 couples, and a dope preacher who's going to be sharing a message later on. But first, a little bit about these next 2 individuals who are about to share some amazing music with us, from their living room to yours. Diana and I first met Stephen and Mary Protheroe the same way many other folks met them, through their coffee shop, and they have become good friends to us. Stephen and Mary operate the most beloved coffee shop in all of Youngstown, the Culture House Coffee Company. But what folks may not know is that Stephen plays the guitar and they both sing beautifully. So sit back and sing with them if you know it. Just enjoy this moment. When I saw it and heard it, my heart was lifted. Stephen's playing and both of their voices just draw you in. And the video, the vibe in the video just kind of feels like home. And that's the heart of CASA, to bring light and love into your home. And that's what I hope this does today. So I'm so thankful that they shared this moment with all of us and that we get to enjoy it. Here you go.
Everything changes. I'm captivated. I'll never be the same with just one look. Everything changes. I'm captivated. I'll never be the same with just one. Just one look. Everything changes. I'm captivated. I'll never be the same with just one look. Everything changes. I'm captivated. I'll never be the same with just one look. With just one look. Just one look. Oh, everything changes. Everything changes. just one look. When all the earth shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord, and all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs. Pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only. Great are you, Lord. Great are you, Lord. Great are you, Lord. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath, it's your breath in our lungs. We pour out our praise, pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you. Jesus, we love you. Oh, how we love you. You are the one the hearts adore. Jesus, we love you. Oh, constant grace remains the cornerstone. Things that we thought were dead are breathing life again. You cause your sun to shine on darkest nights. For all that you've done, we will pour out our love. This will be a anthem song. Jesus, we love you. Oh, how we love you. You are the one our hearts adore. Jesus, we love you. Oh, how we love you. You are the one our hearts adore. Our affection, our devotion poured out on the feet of Jesus. Our affection, our devotion poured out on the feet of Jesus. Our affection, our devotion poured out on the feet of Jesus. Our affection, our devotion poured out on the feet of Jesus. We love you. Oh, how we love you. You are the one our hearts adore. Jesus, we love you. Oh, how we love you. Our hearts adore.
Stephen and Mary, you both are amazing. Thank you for bringing us hope. Thank you for bringing us your music. Folks at home, you need to head over to culturehousecoffeeco.com, order some coffee online. They'll ship it to you. You'll have a full cup before no time. It's a mainstay for Diana and I. And just because we're social distancing and doing our part and flattening the curve does not mean we can't have good coffee. Also, head over to Foregoer Collective on Instagram and check out the modern crochet apparel and heirlooms that Mary creates. They're beautiful. They're unique. You're going to love it. Mary and Stephen are two of the most creative people that we know. Thank you for sharing your gifts with us, guys. We really appreciate it. So a few years ago, I met this next individual in New York City while we were taking a course on the Eucharist at New York Theological Seminary, and everybody told me, "You've got to meet Mark Aarstad," and they were right. First of all, he's an incredible musician and vocalist whose music you will soon hear, wink wink, but also he's a seasoned preacher, teacher, thinker, and he has a pastor's heart. He's a PK like me who grew up in the Pentecostal church, but his journey has brought him into the ancient faith. He was ordained as a priest in the Anglican tradition with the Communion of Evangelical Episcopal Churches in 2016. While at the same time, he remains true to the passion of his spirit-filled roots. He and his wife Danielle, who can sing also, have been in full-time ministry for more than 25 years, and in 2021, they are planning to launch a church in Philadelphia. So be sure to check out Mark's theological ramblings and his cultural commentary on Twitter and Instagram, and hopefully his website soon, and YouTube, etc. I asked Pastor Mark to speak about how we can be people of faith in this context where everything right now in the world is changing during this pandemic. And in the church, we've seen some amazing acts of kindness and love. Most importantly, we've seen churches love their neighbor and protect their community by pausing their gatherings in order to help offset the spread of COVID-19. However, there have been some pastors and churches and televangelists spreading misinformation and blatantly placing people in harm's way by continuing to have large gatherings of people. So Pastor Mark graciously breaks down and nuances how we as people of faith are not to be naive people, but also how we're not to despair and hoard, expecting the worst. This message is so timely and it's so powerful. Take a listen.
Hi friends, blessings to you. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to sit and share some thoughts with you. I recently came across something from a pastor friend of mine who was posting on social media this idea that we need to declare, "I will not be sick, I will not be broke." It bothered me, it troubled me, and it got me thinking. It brought me to a story that many of us are familiar with in Daniel chapter 3. The three Hebrew boys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who have been taken from Israel into exile in Babylon, where King Nebuchadnezzar sets up this golden idol, commands that everybody worship it. They don't worship it and are called in before the king. In verse 13, I'm going to read from Daniel 3. This is what it says. Nebuchadnezzar, in furious rage, commanded that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought. So they brought these men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar answered and said to them, "Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the golden image that I have set up? Now, if you are ready, when you hear the sound of every kind of music, to fall down and worship the image that I have made, well and good. But if you do not worship, you shall immediately be cast into a burning fiery furnace." Look at this question. "Who is the God who will deliver you out of my hands?" Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If this be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you've set up." Now, before we go any further, I want to make a couple important, crucial disclaimers up front, okay? So the first thing is, I am not using this biblical story as some sort of reference to Donald Trump, to political leaders, or anything like that whatsoever. The second thing is, I'm not suggesting that people defy the collective wisdom of the medical community and our political community leaders. And I think lastly, I want to say that I do not think that it is necessarily Christ-like to risk contracting COVID-19 or worse yet, spreading it to other people. It just feels ignorant and selfish to me. So please, throughout this, keep that in mind. What I am concerned about are what I see as two extreme ways of thinking and speaking as Christians during the crisis. And I want to encourage you, if you find yourself especially caught in the middle, right? So I think there are kind of three people that I would be speaking to today. And two of you are sort of on the polar extremes of this maybe. And then the third person is in the middle saying, I really don't know what to think here. And so hopefully this will be encouraging. It might be a little bit corrective, but I'm not trying to be heavy-handed with it. So let me talk about this one pole, this one end. And it was that the pastor friend of mine who was saying, I will not be sick, I will not be broke, the virus isn't going to affect me, the stock market's not going to affect me. And I'm calling that category of thinking naively confident. It's best exemplified by this pastor in Louisiana who is insisting on keeping his church open. And it's a large church. Their midweek service had more than 300 people this past week. That he's defying the governor of his state, determined to keep his doors open this Sunday. And there's a lot of debate as to what's going to happen. Is the state government, going to come in and shut him down, defying his First Amendment rights? And will it hold up in court, so on and so forth? This sort of thinking is very disheartening to a lot of us. It's more or less this thought that if I declare it, it's going to be reality simply because I declare it. I will not be sick. It complains about government intervention and things like that. And here's the reality. This is a mentality that sees what is known. The virus is spreading, the cases reported, the stock market's down, unemployment is up, sees what is known and insists this doesn't apply to me. And I think in that case, I wonder if the gold image that they're really worshiping at is this really bad theology of what's known as divine healing. That it's God's will for everybody to be healthy, wealthy, and wise all the time. I believe that God heals. I'm not saying that. But when I talk about divine healing in that sense, I'm talking about the worst sort of faith healing theology you could imagine. On the flip side, there's a second category, right? So there are some Christians that are all in that. They're declaring it, they're speaking it, they're saying it. And then on the flip side of the coin, you have people that I'm going to call negatively conformist. And that is their thinking conforms to the culture, the prevalent thought around us. And it tends to be negative. And it, first of all, seeks blame. And it's finger pointing at Trump, finger pointing at the Chinese. It's needing to find out, the government conspiracy and that sort of a thing. But it's also very negative. And the negative is the expectation of the worst. We're probably going to get sick. We're going to lose our jobs. We're going to lose our home. It's what leads to hoarding. It's what leads to this sort of me first mentality. And it sees what's unknown, and it balks. It's like the golden idol for them is really this Western civilization God of health and wealth. And it's something that is unprecedented in history because we've never known such levels of health and wealth and lifespans and things like that, and ease and comfort. And all of these things are threatened. So what's amazing to me is how fine the line is between both of those extremes, because both of them are based on presumption. The one is presuming that God is just going to take care of everything and I'm never going to hit a bump in the road, so to speak. The other one is also built on a presumption. And I think that's where we have to lean into this a little bit. And that is, unlike the Hebrew boys, we are not in a situation that calls for civil disobedience. We're not. But very much like the Hebrew boys, we are in a situation in which our physical health and well-being is threatened. And it's a situation that greatly is beyond our control. It's out of our control. And so I think Nebuchadnezzar's question in verse 15 is what got my attention. And that is, he asks him the question, Who is the God who will deliver you out of my hands? Who is this God? Well, I think the first thing we want to say is he's the creator. Now, there's implications to that. Our God is the creator, which means the universe, but also cells. We've seen a lot of pictures of cells lately. He's the creator of cells, of bodies, but he's also the creator of desire, of ingenuity, of study, of research. It's the glory of God to conceal a matter, it says in Proverbs, but the glory of kings to search it out, to seek it out. He is the God who delegates authority to institutions of government. That's who he is, Romans 13. And he does it for our good. This, of course, was written by Paul when a guy named Nero probably was the emperor. Not exactly the most trustworthy and good example of political leadership and authority. He's the God whose kingdom is not of this world. He is the God of mystery. He is the God of miracles. He is the God who is not subject to the laws of the universe. The universe is subject to and contained within him. He is the God who opens blinded eyes. He is the God who cleanses lepers. He is the God who makes the lame walk again. He's the God of resurrection. He is the God of miracles. This is our God. He is also the God who suffers. He is the crucified God. He's the crucified God who had the audacity to tell us, take up your cross, yet lacked the strength to carry his own cross. He is the God who laid down his life, not for his friends, but for his enemies. He is the God who irrationally suggests you should leave the 99 for the one. Defies all logic. Ultimately, he's the God who overcame death by death. He is the God who entered into the worst of human experience from within, and he beat it. He's victorious. He won. He is the God who is love, the love that casts out all fear. He is the love that doesn't quit, doesn't despair, doesn't run away, bears all things, believes all things, endures all things. I think this is why Paul says in Romans 8, well-known passage, starting in verse 35, who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall tribulation or distress or persecution or famine or nakedness or danger or sword? As it is written, for your sake we are being killed all the day long. We are regarded as sheep to be slaughtered. No, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. For I am sure that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor rulers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor anything else in creation, here we are, will be able to separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus, our Lord. Paul never says that these things won't affect us. Paul got affected by the sword, as did the majority of the apostles. It was a season of martyrdom. It's not that this eliminates sickness, eliminates hardship. No, it's that those things don't have the final word. So for those of us who are inclined to think and feel much like the unredeemed world around us, Ephesians 4 is very helpful. I'd encourage you to go in there, starting especially at verse around 17, 18, and relearn Christ. We repent, we change our mind, and we stop thinking like the world and we start thinking like Christ. We look at this virus and we say, with the Hebrew boys, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us. If you are negatively conformist, I want to encourage you, that is your declaration. Our God whom we serve is able to deliver us. That's the God we serve. For those of us who've been taught to presume that God always wants us healthy and that nothing bad is going to happen to us, we also need to repent. We need to change our thinking. And we need to jump into this declaration from Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that says, but if not. See, this is the tension that they're living in that's so beautiful. And maybe the world doesn't just need to see people who avoid the fire, avoid the sickness, avoid the brokenness. Maybe what the world needs to see is men and women who can enter the fire with humble confidence and meet God there. I want to leave you with a thought from one of the voices from the ancient church, Theodoret of Syr. Listen to this. Instead of asking for relief from the troubles unconditionally, we embrace the Lord's planning and providence. And without knowledge of what will be of benefit, we leave the helm to the pilot, no matter what he wishes, understanding clearly that he is able to free us from the threatened evils. Whether he wishes to do so, we do not know. Presumption, right? But we leave it to him, wise governor as he is, and accept his verdict, confident that it is to our benefit. Friends, be encouraged by this. Leave the verdict with God. Be faithful, be led by the Spirit, knowing if he's for us, who can be against us? Grace and peace.
I want to thank my friend Pastor Mark Aarstad for that message. Everyone right now, go follow Mark on Twitter and Instagram at Mark Aarstad. Shifting gears for a little bit, most of us have experienced a paradigm shift in our world due to COVID-19. And one thing's for sure, all change brings grief. In the midst of this, we see people pointing out how we shouldn't neglect our physical health during these times. But equally, it's important to make sure that we take steps to maintain our mental health throughout all of this. And I'm certain I'm not the only one who has had to deal with anxiety and worry and fear. Maybe people have experienced depression and panic. So real quickly, I want you to take a few minutes for a mental health moment with our two friends, Shana and Eric Ash. They have wonderful minds, beautiful hearts, and they come from the mental health community. We asked them to share with us ways for us to keep our mind healthy during these uncertain times. Check this out. Shana and Eric, psychologically, what's going on in the minds and hearts of people all across this country and in the world, for that matter?
One of the things I've been thinking about is how in all the stuff that they talk about, what to do and what not to do, they always say, the most important thing, don't panic. And on the one hand, I think that is like one of the most important things, and also sometimes one of the least helpful when they just say it there and then kind of move on to the next thing. It's kind of ill-defined what that means and of course they'll never say like, oh yeah, now's the time to panic. A couple of the things we have been seeing, like people hoarding things, people kind of running out to the store, and like it makes sense to be buying a bit extra. But some of the reasons like they say not to panic is because historically people in situations like this will buy a lot more than they need of certain things. And then that both means that gets wasted if they don't use it. Other people don't have access to it. It means they have less money, like a month or two down the road when money's tight, they might have, I didn't need a year's worth of toilet paper because now I'm out of this instead. That's a part of it, like why you shouldn't panic, and something that also we're kind of driven to do.
People are already suffering. They're already going through their issues, their normal everyday issues. You take something like a pandemic, throw that into the mix. How has it amplified? What have you seen in your practice?
The benefit of the people that we have right now is that they already have the established resource and the structure, that they're already seeing someone, they already have support, and they kind of know where to go. What is a little concerning is that people who've never had contact with mental health services or like just formal support in general, they might not know where to go, and they're getting their information from the surroundings that they're in. They may not know where to look. So in my experience, I've seen some people who already have issues that they're dealing with kind of have the heightened anxiety. But then on the other hand, I've also seen people who are kind of like brushing it off in a way, just kind of like, I'll believe it when I see it kind of thing. So that's kind of like the other side of the spectrum.
Are we grieving? Is this denial? Is this like the first stage of our grief?
For a lot of people, that can be how they deal with it. Like that's one of the things that protects it, kind of protects their ego and their worldview is, okay, it can't be as bad as everyone says. I think for some people, that's how they deal with it. For some people, it's not helpful, it's not beneficial. but it can kind of make you feel like you have control of a situation where you don't have control.
We know what's going on and we know that we have these feelings, but why are we feeling this way in this time?
Grief really is associated with any type of loss. And if you look at people's individual situations, like what's the loss there? So like, is this person like expecting a loss of, financial stability? Are they expecting a loss of fill in the blank? And everybody deals with that differently.
A lot of the people who either believe conspiracies or minimize these things, there's kind of a defense of the ego that way. If you kind of are able to convince yourself that the experts don't really know what's going on and I do, that even if you're kind of helpless in a complex, bigger than you situation, it kind of protects your ego. It's like, well, even though I can't do anything, I understand it when no one else does.
I know what's really going on.
Yeah. And so some people are kind of pulled towards that. Another bit is cortisol is a hormone in the brain, a neurotransmitter, and sometimes it's called the stress hormone or the anxiety hormone. One of the good ways I've heard it described is the urgency hormone. And it's kind of this idea that we need to act right now, that you don't, it's part of your brain yelling, well, don't just stand there, do something. And it can be very difficult when actually the best thing for you to do is slow down or to wait until you have better information, or to just kind of let things idle as they are, because you have this part of your brain yelling at you to do something. And so that can cause you to make bad decisions, and it can make people, go out and buy a lot of things that they both can't afford to buy and don't really need, or to kind of ruminate on things that might be wrong before they're ever problems, or ruminating more on what the problems are instead of what they might do to help them.
There's a lot of impulsiveness.
Shana, you mentioned loss. I don't know one single person where the normal hasn't been lost. Everyone has had to adjust and adapt to this, so everyone's going through change, and change is the loss of what you're used to. So it's affecting us all.
What are some things that would be helpful for people in this situation? Some healthy practices that we can do to maybe help us go through this process in a more mentally healthy way?
Our emotions tend to be good advisors, but bad drivers. And so kind of being aware of what your emotions are telling you and not acting on them, not letting them be the drivers, but kind of like, okay, if I'm feeling this way, there's probably at least a kernel of truth, and let me look for what the real problem my emotions are telling me is, and then what the best way to go about it is. There's a lot of people right now who are stuck at home, who might not be working, who are home with the kids. And for a lot of people, this can actually be an opportunity that they haven't had very much and may not have for a long time, to build a new habit. That not only kind of taking some time for themselves to kind of address their mental health and their own chill every day, but if there's been a book that you've been meaning to read, or a musical instrument you've been meaning to learn, or starting a daily devotional practice, or starting something not just a bit of time out of your day, but to build a new habit that for the next couple of weeks you'll have one of the best chances you'll have in your life to start building that new habit.
I've been seeing a lot of chatter on the internet, Facebook, social media, about people who were really into working out. All of a sudden, there comes the edict from the government saying, the state says, all right, all gyms are closed. And they're like, oh man, that's how I stay healthy. So here's some tips for keeping your body healthy at home. But what I haven't seen, maybe we're starting to see more, but I think what's needed is to tell people, hey, here's how you can stay mentally healthy when you're in isolation. Something that I know historically has been bad for your mental health. Like, isn't isolation not a good thing always? But yet here we find ourselves in isolation. So what are some ways that we can all stay mentally healthy?
Structure is something that a lot of people are missing right now. Say you get up in the morning, you may not even go to a place that you work, but you have a routine that you do, and it keeps you structured, keeps your sleep cycle structured, things like that. With the loss of that, I think it's really easy for your sleep to become erratic and things like that. And we all know how sleep can impact other areas of your life. People should try to retain as much normalcy as possible. Maybe not waking up as early as you do, but try to wake up at the same time.
I love that, Shana. I love that. So it sounds like, for those of you who are listening, you had a routine, you had a schedule, that's all been shifted. It's important to recreate a routine and a schedule.
Another thing I wanted to mention is that I mean, there's the quote from Mr. Rogers of whenever something bad happens, and you look for the helpers. And right now, that's something that all of us will have an opportunity to do. Not necessarily that we want to go out and be doing these things, because there's social distancing. You don't want to be going out and giving strangers hugs or anything. But all of us in our day-to-day life are going to have a lot more people that we're talking to, communicating with, who are angry or are scared or anxious or lonely. And all of us dealing with people who are more on edge, whether they're family members or friends or neighbors or parents, children, can be a person in their life that can kind of help them de-escalate a bit, help them kind of get some cool back. A week or so ago, I was at the grocery store one of the days before everything was closing down, and I was just going through the checkout line, and the girl there, like, oh, hello, how are you doing? She was kind of over that night. And so I kind of smiled at her and said, how's it been going? Slow day for you? And just kind of joking around. And you can kind of see that, like, she almost like unclenched when she saw that I was going to be a friendly customer and that I was like making some on being. And I
validate how she's feeling.
Yeah. Kind of talking to other people, like, that's, even those little things, like, that's so important, because all of us are kind of in that space where we're on edge, we're kind of clenched up.
Yeah.
And so being that person in someone else's life that gives them at least a minute where they can kind of unclench and cool down for it, that's important. And we all have that opportunity. We're all going to have many of those opportunities, whether we want them or not, with how things are for right now. It gives us that chance to carry God's light in the world.
You guys are doing incredible work, and you helped us tonight. So thank you for being willing to do this. Yeah. To everyone watching, here's to your mental health. Cheers. Well, that's it for our episode today. Thank you for watching CASA. We're going to have our friends Stephen and Mary take us out with another song. We love you all. Stay safe. Keep social distancing. Wash your hands. Look out for one another. And most of all, remember that you are loved with an unending love. We'll see you all soon. Peace.
Some people